name is Shelby Ryburn, and this is my KW story.
Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us today for our My KW story. We have Shelby Ryburn, owner and partner in the Moore Real Estate Group, TLOP extraordinaire in many different roles, and we're going to talk to her today all about how she ended up where she is as a partner and a team owner in one of the largest, most awesome teams in Keller Williams, the Moore Real Estate Group. But Shelby, your journey is pretty interesting because you actually started in real estate almost 25 years ago, kind of haphazardly, ended up selling real estate for a little bit, then went into a long-term corporate career well before you actually became a team leader, OP, and came to Keller Williams whatsoever. Can you give us a brief overview of like what that journey in those first few years before Keller Williams looked like for you?
Yeah, sure. So my story is a little bit unique in that I have always been a very purpose-driven or mission-oriented person, to the extent that people know when I'm walking down the hall, because apparently I walk a certain way. I'm just always on a mission. And so I entered college going, what is my mission? What is my purpose? What am I supposed to do with my life? And had a really hard time in college because I just couldn't get that question answered. And so the things that I was doing didn't feel of value to my future. And so 2.5 years in, I actually left college and landed in property management, accidentally, actually, through a temp agency because I know I needed to work. And they placed me as a receptionist at a property management company. And I spent 5 years at that company, not necessarily with the intention of staying, but just doing my part to be of value to that organization. And so I just started learning kind of every nook and cranny of that business. And by the time I was 24, I ended up running that branch in a small town in the Central Valley of California, and had a lot of business exposure to understanding the property management side, and then had kind of a life-altering moment and decided to move to Southern California, which is where I'd gone to college. And so I had some familiarity down there. And I had a very good friend who I really trusted, who was actually a real estate coach. He referred me to a real estate agent who'd been in business for 29 years. She and I met and just loved each other. She was magnetic. She had high energy. She had a track record of success. And in 5 minutes, I was like, I want to work with you. Really good idea, right?
But yes, no interviews necessary. Just I want to work for you.
Whatever. Yes. Yeah. So 5 minutes later, we decided to do that. I embarked on this journey. I got licensed, and I spent about a year to a year and a half with her. She had very good intentions and is a really wonderful human, but like a lot of real estate agents, she didn't necessarily understand that she needed to learn how to grow and develop people. And so she had myself and one other person around her, but really the training was following her around like a dog on a leash. Like there was no training, there was no structure, there was no, time blocked calendar. It was just learning the business by following her around. And I had nothing in writing because I grew up kind of under the guise of you just trust what people say. So I trusted what she said. And about a year and a half later, there were several deals that it just wound up looking different than our agreement. And I decided that at that point in time, I could no longer afford to stay in business with her, and learned my lesson about the value of interviewing one another, and decided to leave the industry. And that was in 2007. and I'm thankful
that's
for
what took you into your corporate career.
Yep.
Correct?
Yep.
Because you went into a corporate background for what, the next 7 years, I think.
For the next 7 years, I worked for a company called Northwestern Mutual. They're a Fortune 100 financial services firm, highly respected firm. Did really well there, plugged in at a high level, learned everything that I could, and got an opportunity to move to Charlotte, North Carolina to oversee what is their core force. I was originally their chief recruiting officer and then got promoted into their development officer role. And so what that meant is I oversaw their core four of recruiting, training and development of under 5-year reps, their leadership development program, and their top 10 internship program for 10 offices in the Carolinas. And that brought us there in 2011 or so to Charlotte. And once again, plugged in at a really high level, did my part to try and exceed the expectations of the role. And unfortunately, that ended up being my demise because I was putting about 80 hours in a week and had absolutely no balance. And so I, for the first time, learned the lesson of life balance. And when I was pregnant about 2.5 years later, I was experiencing all kinds of health complications that I found out were related to stress and decided I needed to change my life. So walked into the building, resigned, and decided that we needed to start over. And, our life was built around my income because my husband was a teacher in the Carolinas, and unfortunately teachers don't get paid real well. So we sold our house, like we sold my Mercedes, and it just didn't matter because that was not a quality of life. And I started over. I did some consulting in the interim, and then I got introduced to the KW team leader role at one of the market centers in the Carolinas. And that's when my KW future really started, which was in 2014.
So let's talk about that, right? You left your corporate job after 7 years, highly successful, and yet the work-life balance was basically non-existent, right? You're in
Yep.
this high-stress environment and you're starting a
Yep.
family.
Yep.
Did you have intention of getting back into real estate at all?
I didn't. At that point in time, I had launched my own consulting company called Trained to Engage, and I had built all the content, and I was consulting for Northwestern Mutual's home office. And I really wanted to make sure that I was in control of my own destiny, because one thing that I think is a parallel here, Liz, is at KW, we say God and then family and then business, right? Northwestern Mutual, I think, is rooted in really good values as well, but didn't necessarily walk the talk. So the expectation was just work, 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 work. Oh, you have a family? We'll keep working, right? And so I was so burned on what it would look like to work for an organization that I wanted to make sure to stay in control of my destiny so that I could be a good mom and really learn a new reality. But at the end of the day, I'm wired to work. Work gives me life. And I think it's really important, Liz, to understand who you are. I never apologize for being a working mom. I just do my very best to be present where my feet are. And that's the lesson that I had to learn. And part of the reason I learned that is because at KW, they preach that. They want you to also have a life outside of work. It doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean that, if you hear someone on stage saying they have the perfect balance, that there's maybe not some white lies in that, because you have to constantly
There's a
be
lot of gray
aware,
days there. There's a lot of gray days on there.
right?
Doesn't mean you're always
Everybody
going to have the
has
most
to work.
energy on either one either.
No, absolutely not. But it just requires focus. It requires focus and awareness. And sometimes we need a good, swift kick to the backside to get back in alignment, right? So KW's been good for me in
So
that sense.
you took the meeting though, right? So
I
you
did.
took the meeting at KW, and
Yep.
and for what role was that? What did that put
That
you in?
was
Was it to
for
sell
the,
real estate?
it was not, and I don't even, I think I had let my real estate license lapse. And furthermore, it was in California anyway. So it was for the KW team leader role. And there were a lot of parallels to what I had learned in corporate America and some of the roles that I had held there. And so the logic behind that made sense. I just had to decide if I wanted to go back to work for someone or a company. And then number two, decide how to reorient myself on real estate sales, because I had been in financial service sales prior and coaching and developing those folks. But both are 100% commission. And I really think that a lot of what we learn at KW can apply to a lot of different businesses, regardless of, what they sell for a living, right? So it was somewhat of a natural progression. And so when I took the meeting, it ended up being a 6-hour interview because once again, we just hit it off. And I really loved the values of the company and the culture of the company. And I experienced it that day. Like I sat through a class that day just to kind of get the vibe and the experience for what their training looked like, what their people looked like. And I was just attracted to it. And I thought, this is it. I have to take this opportunity. I didn't intend on it, but this is supposed to be my path.
So you actually ended up taking the role shortly after you had your first child. And
Right.
you entered this team leader role. And in our pre-interview, you said something to me on it. You're like, well, I didn't really know what to do in the role, even though it had similarities, and you
Mm-hmm.
didn't like accountability.
Mm-mm.
Just about that accountability piece, because you said something on there that was really crucial that I'd love everyone to hear.
So I'm very entrepreneurial, and you'll hear that when you hear how my story ends. which means I'm also fiercely independent. So I didn't want to be held accountable. To this day, I don't like accountability. So I showed up for the job and I said, what's the job? Tell me what the top performing team leader does, and I'll do that. And these were in the days of like the 2-10-40 in the KW infrastructure and ecosystem. And so I said, okay. So I was just dumb enough to like follow the rules. Like I'm supposed to set 2 appointments a day. I'm supposed to have 10 appointments a week. I'm supposed to have 40 appointments a month and supposedly get 10, gross a month. And so because I didn't want to be held accountable to that, I had an accountability meeting with my OP every Friday at 11 o'clock. And I was like, well, listen, it won't feel like accountability as long as I've had my 10 meetings. And so that was my mission. I was just going to have the 10 meetings so that Friday meeting was more fun than it was accountability. And I have to tell you that led me to so much success. And I think that that's the one thing that whether you're an agent or whether you're a leader, so long as you understand the metrics and what leads to success, you don't have to worry about the outcomes, and you'll have so much life because you'll win at a really high level. And that's what I experienced. It was a really fruitful journey for me just because I was like, I'm just going to follow the playbook. They tell me to have 10 meetings a week, and that's what I'm going to do. So I never have to have an uncomfortable conversation.
Super weird. I do a lot of these interviews, as you can imagine. And so weird when people say, well, I just followed the model. I did the things that I was told, or what makes someone successful in this role. And plot twist, I succeeded. So you actually succeeded quite well in the team leader role, obviously.
Yeah.
You were there for what, 3 years?
I was there for 3 years, and I was really grateful to have an amazing OP and an amazing MCA and an incredible PC. And so there was so much alignment. So it certainly wasn't just a me thing by any means. We really built a strong culture, and we just did the work, and we produced at a really high level, and we wound up in the top 10 market centers.
Well, and then life took you back across the country again to California. So let's jump back to the West Coast. What happens then?
So I had my second child while in the team leader role. Another thing that is very possible, I had 2 small babies during my tenure as team leader. So don't tell yourself you can't also have a life. And when I had my daughter, I really felt a void of them growing up around my family, because I'm born and raised in California. So we came back to California May 31st of 2017. And I took on a hybrid TL/OP role in a market center in the Bay Area. Did that for about a year and a half, and then got invited to become the regional area director for the KW Northern California and Hawaii region, and took that opportunity. And that was pretty cool because it got me to Placer County/Greater Sacramento, which is where I am today, which is where we decided that we wanted to raise our family. And enjoyed a layer of that role, but just decided it was kind of out of alignment with the mission of my life. Not a bad role, just not in alignment with what I wanted. And so I only held that role for about a year before I resigned. And yet during that time, I met 2 guys who were running a team out of KW Folsom, and really felt like they were the type of people that I had experienced in the Carolinas. And so the 3 of us became pretty close. And when I resigned from the regional area director role, we decided to come together and create a new brand and a new partnership, and thus started the More Real Estate Group in December of 2019.
So tell us about December of 2019. What a time to launch a new brand.
Right? Oh my gosh. And we announced it at family reunion, February, when the world closed down like 3 weeks later.
Yep. I remember that Dallas family reunion. I remember that. Brian lost his phone.
He did. That's true.
I remember that. Tell us a little bit about More Real Estate Group. So you guys came together. Brian and Ricky, your 2 partners, were already business partners and had a team in Folsom, and they brought you in, and you guys went into this partnership as a 3-way partnership and rebranded into the More Real Estate Group. Tell us what your world looks like now as the More Real Estate Group, your role in that, and kind of what your day-to-day is.
Sure. So we had to go backwards to go forward. And what I mean by that is I had just come out of, KW leadership. Prior to that, I had come out of corporate leadership. And so I came in with a set of standards that not everybody cared for. And so the team that Brian and Ricky had, they were wonderful people, But when we raised the bar and said, hey, here's where we're going to go and we're going to be number one and this is the vision, not everybody was in alignment with that, and that was okay. And so I think we were left with maybe two of our core admin and no agents after that. And so what was cool about that is that we got to rebuild based on the values and the standards that we wanted to see that were part of our future. And so we attracted our core veteran agents who are still with us to this day in those first several months, and just really set the tone for who we are and how we operate and where we were going. And everybody who comes through our process goes through 5, 6, 7 interviews of the CV process. It's very important to us, whether you are an agent or an admin. And Liz, sometimes I think people know to CV admin, but they don't always CV agents.
They don't always take the time to slow down on the agent side. Yep.
And
they should.
And they should, because this is your brand and you're putting people out there in people's homes representing your brand. So it's important to us to make sure that they're in alignment with our values. And that process enables people to get to know themselves at a level that they have not experienced before. And that creates a bond that is hard to break. So I think one of the reasons that we've done a really great job retaining our veterans is because we dated them before we decided to get married. And so we're now a team of 23 people. And, we will oftentimes invite 2, 3, 4, 5 folks into our world and put them through the 30, 60, 90 to see if, they are a match for us. And they aren't always a match for us, and that's okay. But we are in growth mode. And we're very proud to be the #1 team in the greater Sacramento area in our region. And we were #1 in units in our region for 2023. So
that's very impressive. Very impressive, right? Because if you look at the timeline there, this is a group that came together in the end of 2019 in California, went through a rebuild during COVID when things were shut down, and 2 years later, #1 team in the area. That's very impressive. That's accomplishing a lot. So Shelby, if we had to look at your story, right, and for our people watching, what would be the moral of the story, or the big takeaway that you want to make sure people see out of this story, that they understand?
So if you revert all the way back to my first professional experience in property management, where I was taking a job through a temp agency to answer the phones and be the receptionist, I never didn't lean in or plug in at a high level to the opportunities that were in front of me. They didn't necessarily look like opportunities, but boy, do they become opportunities when you show up every day and figure out how to keep learning. I think being curious is really important. And I think showing up to everything that's offered is why I've had the path that I've had. And, being part of an organization that is so bent on training people and growth, there's opportunities every single day of the week. So you do, when you get really busy, have to prioritize, like, what do I need to learn in this season? But in the beginning, gosh, I wanted to be a sponge and absorb everything that was available to me. And so I think the thing that I would leave behind is that if you're intent on creating opportunity, you don't even have to create it so long as you lean in and plug into what's in front of you.
I like it. And that's just it, we don't have to recreate the wheel. Keller Williams has everything we need here to learn, right? There's outside resources, there's books, there's podcasts, there's so much we can lean into that we don't have to recreate the wheel, and we don't have to hold ourselves back from that. And I think that's so important to see, right? Your journey has taken you through a series of very different roles and experiences, and all of those things, you pull them together, give you the dynamics to be successful where you are.
And I can't tell you how many people are willing to be part of that. Like, I will never forget the day that I just called and introduced myself to Lance Loken after I saw him on stage. I'm like, hi, you don't know me, but like, can I learn from you? And he was like, sure. I'm like, great. Right. And they're almost everybody in our company is willing to take that call and be part of your growth journey. And that's an important element to take advantage of as well.
I agree. So, Shelby, I want to thank you for your time. Viewers, I want to thank you all for your time today. If these lovely folks that are watching this video would like to get a hold of you, send you guys a referral as a thank you, anything like that, how can they find you, Shelby?
They can probably find me on Facebook. I am on Insta, but I'm not really on Insta, so don't find me there. Or you can call me at 916-677-6400 or Shelby Ryburn, that's Ryburn, at kw.com. We serve the greater Sacramento market in California.
All right. Shelby, thank you again so much for your time today. And for everyone else, we will see you on our next My KW Story. Have a great day.